Hello. I'm going to call this section Digesting This Morning's YouTube Video. Take one. Well, how's that for an imperfect start? You're welcome. I was watching YouTube videos as one does, and rather than just reposting one of my favorites, I thought I would try something new and force myself to try to articulate the lesson that I got from the video. So here's my attempt. I'm setting the bar nice and low, so hopefully I will rise to an improved state in the future. The video was about the wisdom of Musashi, who was a samurai, I believe, known for the Book of Five Rings, the Book of Swords, Book of Five Rings. Gosh, I'm real rusty in all of that knowledge. And it's not really relevant to the lessons that I got, other than to give you a little bit of context. It comes from a martial artist background, ancient knowledge, regurgitated by someone else to someone else to someone else, through me to now you. The first part that I wrote down, lesson 1 of this morning's lesson, was accept things as they are. And I thought it'd be fun to wear this very silly wig right over my hair without even hiding it, because that's how I roll. And also not clean up any of the clutter on my desk. Just for a fantastically confusing juxtaposition of accepting things as they are and trying to make them different in whatever way that I want to, right? I think as a creative person, it's such an interesting dance between those two things. I am being self-conscious about all those imperfections, so let me just scooch over here and give you less of a view of that. How's that? Number 2 that I wrote down is, do not seek pleasure or comfort over purpose or discomfort of change. I write confusing notes, but the point being that we often seek that instant gratification, that escape from the discomfort of growth, and in so doing we rob ourselves from growing at all. And it is uncomfortable a lot of times to grow. I think about the caterpillar to the butterfly metaphor, and the nymph to the dragonfly metaphor, and I don't know if we humans are becoming some sort of, beautiful flying creature or not. That would be kind of cool, huh? But I do think that when you look at those humans who make it into that elder state where there's this magic quality about them because they don't compromise themselves and they don't betray themselves in any given moment for that immediate gratification. They're instead being true to that greater sense of self. Then I think then we see the payoff for what often feels like suffering, or maybe looks like suffering, in that transformative process. The thing of it is that I've realized, pinky finger asterisk here, I don't think you can avoid it. Like, I think if you really could just avoid the pain and suffering of transformation and stay a really happy fat caterpillar forever, then, I mean, in some ways you can die young like a fat happy caterpillar, and people do, and I used to aspire to do that. So tangent upon tangent, I think about like all the cherry blossoms that fall to the ground and don't become cherries, all the blossoms in general. And many of us are like that much of life. And to really bloom, blossom into the full capacity that you have in you, the full destiny that could color your fate, you know, your DNA, the hand that you're dealt. You could flesh that out by foregoing those instant seeking of pleasures and really allowing yourself to sit in the discomfort of transformation, keeping in mind your purpose. It often is uncomfortable. I can attest. And I'm not the only one. Let's move on to the third dot in my list is control your emotions. And boy, this is the subject of my current upcoming book, The Shift, Own Your Emotions, Own Your Life. And I really do know this firsthand as a person who with a lot of strong emotions that tend to want to drive the bus, so to speak, of my life, but having learned many ways and many times over that allowing our emotions to control the situation leads to really poor results, as opposed to learning to control our emotions. And that does not mean just suppressing them and not feeling them. I think this is where so many people sort of get it wrong. And what my book is trying to be about is that we need to learn to express our emotions, feel them in healthy ways, maybe even get curious about them and dive into them and see what our bodies are trying to tell us, because emotions are data. They are coming from actual data. They're not, our feelings are the stories we tell about our emotions are not facts, but they are data. And if we can learn to speak more the language of our emotion, translate that into better stories, I think we can live more dynamic and rich lives. So back to the lesson at hand, when we act on impulse, we shortchange ourselves of that rich, dynamic life, basically by, you know, and that's in both directions. Act in an impulse toward the pleasure, toward the fleeting moment happiness, and acting on impulse toward just like reveling in the victimhood or the negative side of things, which is, by the way, our default mode, and hence why this seeming spiral into the pits of despair. Number 4 on my list. Wait, let me go to 3.5 first and talk a little more about controlling our emotions. That means in particular not acting out of those very strong emotions. And on the list is panic, rage, and despair, but I would also add really strong sexual attraction and you know, that manic happiness that some of us are very familiar with for various reasons. Acting, now it's, you know, those feelings, those emotions are natural. They're going to happen. I don't think it's healthy to want to never have them, but to learn to recognize when we're in that and temper them, learn to take steps to re-regulate ourselves rather than taking actions with other people or in our relationships that could cause damage, and in fact often do cause a lot of damage in relationships. Again, ask me how I know. Number 5 on my list is to I'm trying to understand my own notes here. I got confused. Gain perspective. Seek a bird's eye view. I call it the zoom out. Sometimes I use the zooming out, like or zooming in as well. Depends on what perspective you are using, but a lot of times, more often than not, when we are unregulated or dysregulated, we are caught up in ourselves, caught up in our own heads, and I'm getting a message over there. Caught up in our own personal worlds And that can lead to a lot of personal suffering. So if you find yourself caught up in your own personal suffering, a great way out is just to zoom out, zoom your perspective. You have this capacity to, if it helps, to pretend you're a little bird. Imagine you're a bird looking down at the situation and see what would it look like. Imagine you are, looking from the moon. Imagine you're looking from the sun. Zoom way out and realize what a tiny, shiny little speck of a huge, grander total that you are. And it can help put your problems in perspective and can help dissolve the suffering that you're feeling. It lessens the acuteness of it. When we shift our focus outwards and step outside ourselves. And, I talked about the universe and all of that, and that it can be helpful, but it doesn't have to be that drastic. It can be like just shifting your focus to how can I make somebody else smile who I'm passing by at the store? Or how can I, help someone else's life by reaching out to them and seeing if they need something today. Maybe it's not even taking action, although I do encourage us to take action from those positive places. But maybe it's just, it starts with that internal shift of shifting your perspective from focusing on yourself to focusing on others, to focusing on the bigger perspective. And that is a tried and true way to get yourself out of suffering. And I want to add that getting trapped in your own suffering is quite normal for a human being. Thousands of years of humans documenting our experiences would testify to that being a fact. So I just want to remind you and I of that. It's quite normal. Give yourself a little grace for your humanness. Number 5 on my dots. I see where I confused myself because I made a little star over there that I got confused with a dot. Number 5, last and not least, and nearly lost, was replace envy with gratitude. I think the lesson was talking about not being jealous, and I get caught up in my mind about the difference between envy and jealousy, and there are some distinctions we could get into, but let's just set that aside for now and say that anytime I find myself feeling jealous or envious, and even if it's in that more positive way that it can be, where I just see something that someone has and I think to myself, oh, I would like that, instead of maybe that more jealous way where we think, I wish that person didn't have that because I want it, which is a much more malicious and ugly way of being. But I do think there's a way of I think, again, envy and jealousy are natural, and there's a way of having those feelings that is less toxic and nasty and ugly. And that has to do with, recognizing when we're feeling that, and then using that as a trigger to think, oh, what about the situation is something that I want, and how can I draw more of that into my life, or make room for more of that in my life, or what am I doing to keep that out of my life if I don't feel like I have that. But the lesson and the little point, the way I phrased it, the way I wrote it down, was I think more about using that feeling to trigger a feeling of appreciation and gratitude. So rather than envying or being jealous about what someone else has or what you don't have, using that to reflect on what you do have and what you have to be grateful for and appreciative for. Again, subtle nuances in those words, gratitude and appreciation. But I like appreciation because sometimes gratitude kind of turns into a platitude, and that rhymes, so it's true. But it has its place for sure, and expressing gratitude, I'm all for it, and it's good. But appreciation for me is a little more nuanced and maybe more flexible. It allows me to, I can appreciate someone for their imperfections, even if I'm not genuinely grateful. I can become grateful for it by appreciating that that we all have our different natures, that we're all on our different journeys, that our individual imperfections are part of what help us all learn to give each other and ourselves more grace, and that we're all in this learning experience, back to the, you know, the growth cocoon transformation thing. So that's my ramble. Thank you for giving me a lot of grace and patience as I fumble through what I hope will be the first of many in a series of this new chapter of me holding myself more accountable to saying what I want to say through my own unique filter, and not just reiterating what someone else has said in someone else's words, and not just copying and pasting and sharing, which is not that there's anything wrong with that, but I have worked hard to develop my skills of being able to articulate myself and be an original creative person and thinker and speaker. And so I recognize that I'm shortchanging myself, doing myself a disservice by not pushing myself into this uncomfortable zone of growth. So thank you for witnessing me. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. I welcome your questions and comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out the description if you'd like to find other ways of connecting with me and supporting me. And until next time, peace.